Today marks a major legal milestone in the global trade arena as the Supreme Court convenes to consider the sweeping tariffs imposed by President Trump and whether those tariffs fall within presidential power under the IEEPA. The stakes extend well beyond this administration. They reach the core of how far the executive branch may go in regulating trade without new legislation from Congress. From the courtroom to boardrooms and grocery stores, the implications are everywhere. About $90 billion in tariff revenue has already been collected under President Trump's program, with projections placing the ceiling in the trillions of dollars. Many American consumers, small businesses and importers are already feeling the pressure of higher prices and increased uncertainty. A group of U.S. states, small businesses, an educational toy manufacturer and a wine importer have challenged the administration, arguing that the Constitution assigns the tariff and tax power to Congress, not the president, and that the IEEPA does not mention tariffs. As one analyst put it, the law was written to enable economic sanctions, not a sweeping import tax regime. Expect tight scrutiny today of how the justices define key terms, not least what does it mean to regulate trade under the IEEPA, and is a tariff effectively a tax on American consumers. One veteran legal observer noted that you'll want to listen for how the bench, especially Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, both appointed by President Trump, pass those issues. Will they stand by a formal interpretation of the Constitution's separation of powers, or will they lean toward broader executive discretion? The rhetoric from the administration has been striking. In one filing, the government declared that just 1 year ago, the United States was a dead country, and that thanks to trillions of dollars in foreign payments under the tariffs, America is now strong. The burdens of this trade policy fall on everyday Americans via higher prices in stores, complex uncertainty for businesses, and a transformation of trade law precedent. This may well turn into a landmark case for the court and for future presidents. For the administration, the promise is that these tariffs will unwind years of unfair trade practices and restore economic balance. For the challengers, the warning is that without clear congressional authorization, the country will be turning power over to the executive branch in ways that undermine the Constitution's design. In short, today's argument is not simply about whether one president exceeded his authority. It is about the limits of presidential power in the trade arena, the role of Congress in setting tariff policy, and the economic consequences of upending that balance. This literally has called this case life or death for the country. President Trump, 1 year ago, the United States was a dead country, and now, because of the trillions of dollars being paid by countries that have badly abused us, America is strong. Administration legal filing, these statements reflect the high stakes as viewed by the administration. At the same time, opponents caution that while the rhetorical stakes are hypercharged, the constitutional stakes are perhaps even more consequential. Whether the executive branch must obtain explicit congressional authorization before imposing broad import taxes, how the justices treat the term tariff, is it legally a tax on U.S. consumers, which only Congress may impose, or is it a permissible measure of trade regulation by the president? Whether the statute's grant of authority under IEEPA is interpreted broadly to allow tariffs, or narrowly, as past usage suggests, for sanctions, embargoes, asset freezes. The presence of conservative justices who claim textualist or originalist approaches, do they adhere to strict limits on executive power, or do they allow the modern state to give more room to the president? Whether any ruling will stay or unwind the tariffs in the immediate term, and the potential ripple effects for U.S. Treasury revenues, for global trade flows, for import prices and inflation. The broader doctrine known as the major questions doctrine. How much must Congress clearly authorize big policy shifts? The court's answer here may either reinforce or weaken that doctrine. If the court finds that the president did exceed his authority under the IEEPA, it would mark a major blow to President Trump's trade agenda and set precedent restricting executive power in trade matters. Prior lower court decisions have already gone that way. If the court instead sides with the administration, it could open the door to far more expansive presidential control over trade policy, potentially reshaping US economic relations globally and reducing the role of Congress in tariff decisions. The ripple effects would reach US consumers, possibly meaning fewer protections against rising prices, greater vulnerability in supply chains, and more uncertainty for small businesses that rely on imports or international trade. Today's session is more than legal formalism. It is perhaps one of the defining trade policy and constitutional decisions of our time. The Supreme Court's decision will answer a simple but profound question. Does the president have the power to impose sweeping tariffs under a statute designed for emergency economic measures? The answer will define not only this administration's ability to wield trade policy, but also the broader architecture of US economic governance. For Americans across the country, consumers, business owners, importers, the outcome could hit their wallets in a direct way. Whichever side prevails, the ruling will reverberate far beyond the court docket, shaping the balance between Congress and the president and influencing how the US engages with the global economy for years to come.
Living in DC, like going to museums or going to some places because they rely on federal funds to operate, so I can enjoy that.